It starts like any other quiz show moment. Bright lights, a quiet audience, a board filled with categories. And one category stands out: secrets of the bees. Now, that might sound simple at first. Bees? Really? But what unfolds next is far more fascinating than anyone expects, because behind every answer is a hidden world most people never truly understand. And it all begins with a $2,000 clue. Secrets of the bees for $2,000. A pause. You can almost feel the tension. Then Jamie buzzes in. What is waggle? Close. Very close. But not quite complete. It is the waggle dance. And just like that, we step into one of the most incredible communication systems in nature, because the waggle dance isn't just a random movement. It's a language, a precise, mathematical, almost unbelievable way bees tell each other where to find food. Distance, direction, even quality, all encoded in movement. Think about that for a moment. A tiny insect performing a dance that maps the world. You can almost picture it now. Inside a buzzing hive, one bee returns, moving in a figure-8 pattern, vibrating its body, and every other bee is watching, learning, following, because that dance might lead them to survival. But that's just the beginning, because the next clue reveals something far more intense. Bees for $1,600. Jamie goes again. What is the giant Japanese wasp? The answer comes quickly. No! A brief silence. Then Barbara buzzes in. What are the murder hornets? Yes, that's correct. And just like that, the tone shifts. Because now we're not just talking about bees, we're talking about their greatest enemy, murder hornets. A name that sounds dramatic, but carries real weight. These creatures are powerful predators. Fast, precise, relentless. And when they attack a hive, it's not just a fight. It's a takeover. But here's what makes it even more fascinating. Bees don't just run, they fight back. And the way they do it is something almost unbelievable. But we'll come back to that. Because the game moves on, and so do the questions. Bees for $1,200? Jamie again. Drones? Yes. Correct. Simple. But behind that simple word is an entire role within the hive. Because not all bees are the same. Some work, some protect, and some exist for a single purpose. Reproduction. Drones. They don't gather nectar. They don't defend the hive. They don't even have stingers. Their entire existence leads to one moment. One flight, one chance. And after that, their story ends. It's a life defined by purpose and nothing more. Strange, isn't it? But that's how nature works. Efficient, focused, unforgiving, and yet beautifully balanced. Then comes the next clue. Bees for $800. Jamie doesn't hesitate. What is nectar? Yes, correct again. But this time, the answer feels almost too simple, because nectar is where everything begins. It's just a sweet liquid hidden inside flowers. But to bees, it's everything. It's energy. It's survival. It's the foundation of an entire ecosystem. And when a bee collects nectar, it's not just feeding itself. It's pollinating the world, helping plants grow, helping crops survive, helping life continue. And most people never even notice. Think about that. Something so small, doing something so important, without recognition, without applause, just doing its job. But the final clue brings things somewhere unexpected. Secrets of the bees for $400. Jamie once again. What is a broomstick? That's right. And for a moment, you might wonder, a broomstick? What does that have to do with bees? But sometimes the simplest tools play a role in the biggest stories. Because beekeeping isn't just science, it's tradition. It's patience. It's understanding something that doesn't speak your language and still learning to work with it. And sometimes all it takes is the right tool, but just when you think it's over. There's one more thing. If you want more bee facts, a new voice, a shift in energy, Secrets of the Bees is premiering tomorrow on Nat Geo and Disney Plus. And suddenly, This isn't just a quiz anymore. It's an invitation to look closer, to understand more, to see something familiar in a completely different way, because what we just saw, that was only the surface. And what comes next changes everything. Because bees aren't just insects. They're engineers, strategists, communicators. In many ways, they're more organized than we are. Take the hive, for example. At first glance, it might look chaotic. Thousands of bees moving in every direction, buzzing, working, constant motion. But look closer and you'll see something incredible: order. Every bee has a role, every movement has meaning, every action supports the colony. It's not random, it's a system, a living, breathing system. And at the center of it all is the queen. Now you might think the queen rules everything, she gives orders, controls the hive. But the truth is far more interesting. The queen doesn't command, she produces. Her main role is to lay eggs, thousands of them every single day. And the rest of the hive, they respond, they adapt, they maintain balance. It's not about control, it's about cooperation. And that changes how you see everything. Because suddenly this tiny world feels a lot bigger. But remember those murder hornets? This is where things get intense. When they attack, they don't just kill a few bees. They can wipe out an entire colony, fast, brutal, efficient. But bees have developed a defense unlike anything you'd expect. When a hornet enters the hive, the bees surround it. Hundreds of them forming a tight ball. And then they vibrate rapidly, increasing the temperature, raising it higher and higher until the hornet can't survive. It's called a heat ball, and it's brilliant. Because the bees can tolerate the heat, but the hornet can't. So they win. Not with strength, not with size, but with strategy. You can almost feel that moment. A coordinated effort where every bee plays a part, where survival depends on unity, and it works most of the time, but not always. And that's what makes it real. Nature isn't perfect. It's a constant battle, a balance that can shift at any moment. And bees, they're right in the middle of it. But here's the part most people don't think about. Without bees, everything changes. Crops fail, plants disappear, food chains collapse, and suddenly that small creature you barely notice becomes one of the most important species on the planet. Let that sink in. Because it's not just about honey, it's about survival, our survival. And that's why stories like this matter. That's why a simple quiz show moment can lead to something much bigger. Because sometimes the smallest questions reveal the biggest truths. But we're not done yet. Because what happens next might change how you see bees forever. Imagine standing in a field. Flowers stretching as far as you can see. And somewhere in that quiet space, there's movement. Soft, constant. Bees, hundreds of them, moving from flower to flower. And if you listen closely, you can hear it, a low hum. Almost like the field itself is alive, because in a way, it is. That sound, it's not noise, it's work. It's life in motion. Every bee you see is on a mission, searching, collecting, returning, and repeating the process again and again. Day after day, no breaks, no recognition, just purpose. But here's what makes it even more fascinating. They remember. Bees can remember which flowers they visited, which ones had nectar, which ones didn't. They learn, they adapt, they optimize their routes. Almost like tiny pilots navigating invisible maps. And when they return to the hive, they share that information through the waggle dance, full circle. From a quiz show answer to one of the most advanced communication systems in nature, and suddenly that simple moment on stage feels a lot more meaningful, because now you understand it, not just as an answer, but as a story. But here's a question. Why don't we notice this more? Why do we overlook something so important? Maybe it's because it's always been there, constant, reliable, quiet, until it isn't. Because in recent years, bee populations have been declining. And that changes everything. Less pollination, less food, more imbalance, and suddenly the world feels a little more fragile. a little more uncertain. But there's hope, because awareness leads to action, and action leads to change. Beekeepers, scientists, even everyday people are finding ways to help, planting flowers, reducing harmful chemicals, protecting habitats. Small steps that make a big difference. And maybe that's the real secret of the bees. Not just how they live, but what they teach us. That even the smallest actions can have the biggest impact. That working together is stronger than working alone. And that sometimes the answers we're looking for are right in front of us. We just have to pay attention. But there's something even deeper beneath all of this. Something you don't see at first glance. Because a hive isn't just a place. It's a living system. Almost like a single organism made up of thousands of individuals. Scientists even have a name for it, the superorganism. And once you understand that idea, everything changes. Because each bee on its own is fragile, limited, replaceable. But together, they become something powerful. Something resilient. Something that can survive challenges far beyond the ability of a single bee. You can almost picture it. A cold night. Temperatures dropping. The outside world turning harsh and unforgiving. But inside the hive, the bees cluster together. Tightly. Carefully. They vibrate their bodies to generate heat. Protecting the queen. Protecting the future. And slowly, patiently, they endure. It's not dramatic. It's not loud. But it's survival at its most precise. And then morning comes. The sun rises. The world warms again. And just like that, the hive comes back to life. Workers leave. Scouts explore. The cycle continues. It never really stops. Because it can't. That's the nature of it. Constant motion. Constant purpose. But here's where things take another turn. Because not every bee stays the same. In fact, a worker bee's life changes over time. When she's young, she starts inside the hive, cleaning cells, feeding larvae, taking care of the next generation. Then, as she grows older, her role shifts. She begins building, producing wax, repairing the hive structure, and eventually she becomes a forager, flying out into the world, facing risks, searching for nectar, and every stage has a purpose. Every phase matters. It's like a built-in progression, a life path, written into biology. And yet, it feels almost intentional, almost designed. And here's something that might surprise you. Foragers, the bees that leave the hive, they're the oldest. They take the biggest risks. Because their time is already limited, so they become the explorers, the ones who face the unknown. And when you think about it, that's a powerful idea. That those closest to the end of their journey are the ones who go the farthest. But what happens when something goes wrong? When a bee doesn't return, the hive doesn't stop. It adapts. Another bee takes its place. The system continues, not because it's cold, but because it has to. Survival doesn't wait, and that's one of the hardest truths in nature, but also one of the most honest. Because while individual stories matter, the bigger picture matters more. And bees understand that instinctively. But there's a moment, a rare one, when the entire hive makes a decision. A massive one that changes everything. It's called swarming. And when it happens, it looks like chaos. Thousands of bees leaving the hive at once, filling the air, moving together in a swirling cloud. It can feel overwhelming, even a little frightening. But it's not random. It's a plan. A carefully coordinated transition. Because the colony has grown too large, too crowded, and it's time to expand. So the old queen leaves, taking part of the colony with her. While a new queen prepares to take over, it's not just movement. It's division, renewal. And for a moment, the bees gather, clustering on a branch, or a surface nearby, waiting, deciding, choosing their next home. Scout bees fly out, searching, evaluating locations. And when they return, they don't argue, they don't compete, they dance. Again, the waggle dance, communicating options, sharing information until eventually a decision is made, a direction is chosen, and the swarm moves together as one. You can almost feel that moment, a silent agreement, a collective choice, and then they're gone. But what happens next is something most people never think about, because starting a new hive isn't easy, uncertain, and yet they do it anyway, because that's how life continues, through risk, through change, through movement, and maybe there's something in that for us too. But that's not even the most surprising part, because what happens inside that new hive might be the most important story of all. Because once the new hive begins, everything resets. New structure, new roles, new beginnings. And at the center of it all, a new queen emerges, but her journey is far from simple. In fact, it's one of the most intense processes in the entire hive. Because before she becomes queen, she's just another larva, no different from the others. Same start, same potential. But then something changes. She's fed something special. Royal jelly, a nutrient-rich substance given only to future queens. And because of that one difference, her entire development shifts. Her body grows larger, stronger, more capable, and eventually she becomes something completely different. A queen. Now think about that. Two larvae, same beginning, but one becomes a worker and the other becomes royalty. All because of what they're fed. It's a small detail with massive consequences. And it shows just how sensitive and precise nature can be. But here's where it gets even more intense. Because there isn't always just one future queen. Sometimes there are several, and when they emerge, only one can remain. So they fight, not out of anger, not out of hatred, but out of necessity, because the hive needs a single leader, a single source of continuity, and in the end, one queen survives. The others don't. It's not easy to hear, but it's real. And once the new queen takes her place, her role begins immediately. She mates, stores enough genetic material to last her entire life, and then she starts laying eggs. Thousands every single day. It's constant. Relentless, essential, because the survival of the hive depends on her. But here's something most people don't realize. The workers can replace her if she becomes weak, if she slows down. If something changes, they adapt. They create a new queen. And the cycle continues. It's not about loyalty, it's about balance. And that idea might be one of the most important lessons of all. Because everything in the hive serves the future, not the individual. But just when you think you understand how it all works, something unexpected happens. Because the outside world is changing, and the bees are feeling it. Because for all their precision, all their organization, all their resilience, bees are facing something they didn't evolve for. Rapid change. Not over thousands of years, not over centuries, but within decades. And that shift is creating pressure on a system that depends on balance. You see, bees rely on patterns, seasons, bloom cycles, temperature rhythms. It's all connected. Flowers bloom when they're expected to. Bees emerge when food is available. Everything lines up. But when that timing shifts even slightly, it creates confusion. Flowers may bloom too early or too late, and bees, they arrive and find nothing. Or worse, they miss the peak entirely. And that means less nectar, less food, less energy for the colony. You can almost imagine the silence. A field that should be buzzing, but isn't. And that silence means something is off. But that's just one part of the story. Because there are other challenges too. Habitat loss, fewer wild spaces, fewer flowers, more concrete, more distance between food sources, which means bees have to travel farther, use more energy, take greater risks, and sometimes they don't make it back. And then there are chemicals, used to protect crops but not always selective. And even small exposure can affect a bee's ability to navigate, to remember, to return home. Imagine that a bee leaves the hive, finds food, and then can't find its way back. Not because it's weak, but because something interfered. That's not just a loss of one bee. That's a break in the system. And enough breaks start to change everything. This is often called colony collapse, when large numbers of worker bees disappear, leaving behind the queen and the hive without support. It's quiet, sudden, and deeply concerning, because it's not always clear why it happens. There isn't just one cause, it's a combination, a buildup of pressures that eventually becomes too much. But here's where the story shifts again. Because while these challenges are real, so are the solutions. And they don't always come from large systems. Sometimes they start small, very small. Like a single garden, planting flowers, native ones, the kind bees recognize, the kind they've evolved with, providing consistent food sources, safe spaces, moments of rest. It might not seem like much, but to a bee, it's everything. And when enough people do it, those small changes add up. Communities begin to shift. Landscapes become more welcoming. And suddenly the environment starts to support life again. Not perfectly, but better. Beekeepers play a role too, caring for hives, monitoring health, protecting colonies from disease and parasites. It's not just about honey. It's about stewardship, understanding a system and helping it stay balanced. And science continues to evolve. Researchers study behavior, tracking movement, finding ways to reduce harm, to improve survival, to understand what bees need, not just what we want from them, because that difference matters a lot. And maybe that's the biggest shift of all, moving from control to understanding, from taking to supporting. Because bees were never meant to work for us, they've always been working with the world around them. We're just starting to notice. But here's something even more interesting. Even with all these challenges, bees are still adapting, still finding ways, still doing what they've always done. And that resilience, it's something worth paying attention to. Because it tells us something important, that even under pressure, systems can adjust. Life can continue, but only if we give it the chance. And what happens next might just change how we see our role in all of this. Because at some point, this stops being just a story about bees and starts becoming something more. A mirror, a way to look at how systems work, how communities function, how small roles contribute to something bigger. Think about it. Every bee matters. But no single bee defines the hive. It's the collective, the cooperation, the shared purpose. And when that balance is strong, the system thrives. But when it's disrupted, everything feels it. That idea, it's everywhere. In nature, in cities, even in our own lives. But bees take it a step further. Because they don't hesitate. They don't question their role. They act instinctively, consistently. And that creates efficiency, clarity, momentum. Now imagine applying that level of clarity to anything. Work, goals, daily life, knowing your role, understanding your impact, and contributing without needing recognition. It's a powerful concept, but here's where it gets even more interesting. Because despite everything we've learned, there's still so much we don't fully understand. For example, how do bees make collective decisions so effectively? When scout bees search for a new hive location, they return with different options, different directions, different distances, and yet the colony reaches consensus without conflict, without confusion, through communication, through repetition, through something that feels almost like voting. About what it means to understand. Maybe intelligence isn't always about size or individual thinking. Maybe sometimes it's about connection, about interaction, about systems working together, and bees, they might be one of the best examples of that. But beyond the science, there's something else, something quieter, something you feel more than analyze. It's that moment when you stop and watch a bee, really watch. the way it moves, the way it hovers, the precision of its landing, the purpose behind every action. And for a second, everything slows down. You notice details you missed before. You appreciate something small in a way you hadn't before. And that shift, that awareness, it changes how you see the world. Not just bees, everything. Because sometimes understanding one small part of nature opens the door to understanding much more. And maybe that's what this was always about. Not just answers on a board, not just a quiz, but a starting point, a spark, a reason to look closer. Because what we've uncovered so far is only part of the story. And what comes next brings everything together. Let's go back to where this started. A simple question on a game show. Secrets of the Bees for $2,000. At the time, it felt like just another clue, just another answer. But now, it feels different. Because now you know that behind that answer was an entire world. A system of communication, a structure of roles, a balance of survival, and a story that connects to everything around us. From the waggle dance, to the structure of the hive, to the defense against predators, to the challenges of a changing world, it all fits together, piece by piece, and suddenly, bees aren't background anymore. They're central, essential, irreplaceable. And maybe the most surprising part, they've been doing this all along, long before we studied them, long before we understood them, long before we realized how much we depend on them. They were already there, working, building, sustaining life, quietly, consistently, without attention. But now the attention is here, and with it comes responsibility, because understanding something changes your relationship with it. You can't unsee it. You can't ignore it. Once you know the role bees play, it stays with you. In small ways, like noticing flowers differently, or pausing when you hear that familiar hum, or choosing to plant something that supports life beyond your own. These aren't big actions, but they matter, because just like in a hive, small contributions add up. And that's where this story becomes more than information. It becomes a choice, a perspective, a way of seeing the world that's a little more connected, a little more aware, a little more intentional. And that shift, it's powerful because it doesn't require perfection, just attention, just effort, just a willingness to care. And maybe that's the real takeaway. Not just what bees do, but what they show us, that systems matter, that cooperation works, that even the smallest roles can support something much bigger, and that sometimes the answers we're looking for are already right in front of us. We just have to notice. So the next time you see a bee, pause for a second. Look closer, because what you're seeing isn't just an insect. It's a worker, a navigator, a communicator, part of a system refined over millions of years. And in that moment, you're witnessing something extraordinary, even if it feels ordinary. And maybe that's the biggest shift of all, learning to recognize the extraordinary in what we once thought was simple. Because once you do that, everything starts to feel different, more connected, more meaningful, more alive. And it all started with a question, a small one, on a board, Secrets of the Bees. But now, it was never just a category. It was a doorway. And here's the thing, stories like this, about the continuous cycle of life, they don't really end. Because bees are still out there right now, flying, working, diligently continuing their vital cycle, and the world is still responding to them. We see plants growing, flourishing with new life, food developing, ecosystems balancing, all intricately connected to something so small, yet so powerful. So maybe the real question isn't, what are the secrets of the bees? Maybe it's, what will we do now that we know their profound impact on our world? Because awareness is just the beginning. Understanding their importance is the first step. Action is what comes next. It's about making a tangible difference. And even the smallest action can make a difference, creating a ripple effect. Just like in the hive where every bee plays a crucial role. And that The power of collective action might be the most important answer of all.